Hey everybody, this is Pastor Chris. I'm coming to you live from Lexington Park Baptist Church. This is PC Studios and it is November the 23rd, 2022. How in the world are you doing? I hope you're blessed and highly favored. Whoever's out there watching right now, thank you for being on the program. Make sure you sign in. If you want to be live with us at the noon hour, you need to sign in at facebook.com/Pastor Chris McCombs. Again, everybody, welcome to the program today. I hope that you are blessed and highly favored. This will be the last day of the program this week as we are going to go into Thanksgiving, right? So I want to say from my heart, from my family to your family, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a great time giving thanks to God for all the many things. In fact, if you want to right now, you could write down in here today why or what is something that you give thanks to God for. All of us have things that we can thank God for. I just want to encourage you, make sure that you give thanks to God for things that He has done in your life. So if God has given you something to be thankful for, write that in there and share it with one another. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the program today. And we are going to look at 2 Corinthians chapter 8. We're going to look at verses 1 through 5. Again, 2 Corinthians chapter 8, 1 through 5. So they've taken up this collection. Remember, we're talking about collaboration, cooperation, and contribution. So we're contributing. So we're collaborating, we're cooperating, and we're contributing. And so this contribution is coming in a form of a collection. So listen to what happens in verse 8, chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians. We want you to know, brothers and sisters, talking to the church then, right? About the grace of God that was given to the churches of Macedonia. The churches, not the church of Macedonia, but how many ever churches there were. We want you to hear this, the grace of God that was given to these churches. During a severe trial brought about by affliction, and their abundant joy and their extreme poverty overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. I can testify that according to their ability, and even beyond their ability, of their own accord, they begged us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in the ministry to the saints, and not just as what we had hoped. Instead, they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us by God's will. So we urged, we can go in verse 6, Titus, that just as he had begun, so he should also complete among you this act of grace. What's this act of grace? This act of grace is this act of giving, right? This act of giving. And so I want you to know that I've been sharing this with you, that the gospel should lead us to generosity, and generosity is an act of grace. So we have a gospel ministry, we have a generosity ministry, we have a grace ministry. All those three G's go together. Are we generous people? Are we gospel people? Are we gracious people? These are all legitimate things we should ask ourselves as we look at this text and we look at these churches of Macedonia. Now remember, there's this, I've talked in the book of Acts, I've talked in 1 Corinthians, and now we're talking in 2 Corinthians. There's other texts that would support this too, but this collection that was being held and assembled in Jerusalem, all these churches from Corinth to Jerusalem, to Macedonia, to Galatia, we talked about, to Ephesus, to Antioch, they're all giving, they're all sharing the gospel, and they're all generosity, and they're all filled with this act of grace. So the churches of the first century had those things going. Should not the church of the 21st century have grace, generosity, and the gospel? The answer is, go ahead and write it in. You know what it is. It's yes. We should have this great gospel focus, this extreme ability to have generosity, and we should be filled with grace. These things this act of grace should compel us. And what did they do? Let's make sure. So this grace, this work of grace that began, that Paul is now encouraging Titus to continue on. But in verse 2, we see they were in severe trial. They were in severe affliction. So in the midst of trial and affliction and in the midst of poverty, the churches of Macedonia all got together. So in their poverty They gave with generosity. In our prosperity, we should give with generosity. You've heard me say those. Those are little cliche little statements that you can write down and keep for yourself. In our prosperity, we should give with generosity. And they did too during their trials, during their afflictions, during their famine, during their poverty, they gave. And listen, it says that they had abundant joy and their extreme poverty overflowed in what? A wealth of generosity on their part. You can't make these words up. So as they are giving with generosity, that generosity is overflowing with abundant joy from a place of poverty. Now, we don't think of this. Normally, when you think of something that's in poverty, it's lacking, right? Poverty means we don't have. So the churches of Macedonia didn't have. They had affliction, they had persecution, they had trials, they had famine, they had poverty. And in their poverty, what did they do? They gave. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, right? But, God talks about these people. But in poverty, they gave. In trials, they gave. In affliction, they gave. Generosity and joy. Joy and generosity go together. When we give, we shouldn't be thinking about, I can't go out and buy that whatever I wanted. Or I can't do this now. Or I'm going to have to give up my Starbucks venti chai latte or whatever it might be. That's not what Macedonia was doing. They could care less about any. First of all, they didn't have Starbucks, but anyway, let's put it in real terms, right? That's even minor for us. Imagine giving that. Who cares about freaking Starbucks, right? I mean, really, come on, But we give. They gave in their poverty. We're going to give from our prosperity, but we should give with joy. We should be glad that we can give. And if you're out there and I'm out there and whatever we do, we should be joyful that we can contribute and give to the cause of Christ and to his kingdom. And so are they. So they're filled with abundant joy that they can give. And in their extreme poverty, what overflowed? Generosity. So now think about it. Usually when you think of something overflowing, what's it coming from? Something that's full, right? This is not full. They're overflowing out of nothing. I didn't get time to really go deep into this Sunday. They're overflowing from nothing. It's poverty. There's nothing in the pot, but they're giving. And they're giving graciously with joy. Extreme poverty, though, overflows with wealth of generosity on their part. Then you get to verse 3. Paul is saying, I testify to this. I've seen what they've done. Not only did they give from their ability, he says, but they gave beyond their ability. Now, I can be honest with you, and they did it on their own accord. In other words, no one coerced them into doing it. Nobody pressured them into it. They're like, we want to do this, right? I give, I think, in my ability. I give pretty faithfully. But to give beyond my ability, and to give beyond my ability in the midst of affliction and poverty, I just want you to dwell on those roads. I want you to look back here and go back and read verses 1 to 5 and go, be amazed. Really be amazed at what this church is saying and what this church did and what Paul's testifying to. That during affliction and a famine and poverty, I had joy in giving, but not only did I just give to my ability, I can put a few things aside. No, I gave above and beyond my ability. That's amazing. I don't know of Lexington Park if we're going to be that kind of church. I don't know if we can be. Are we called to be? I think if the first century church is called to be, then we should give with abundant joy. If the first century church is called to give out of nothing, out of poverty, should we not give greatly out of generosity, even to our ability and above our ability? I'm really convicted. My answer to that's yes, we should. I should. You should. We all should. Now, the few of you that are watching, whatever, but this should resonate with all of us, that we should be compelled to do such. By the way, if we did this, we would not have problems. I still believe this to this day. If every Christian and every church would just tithe, there would be no problems we could not solve. There would be no needs that would go unmet. The sad part is that's not what happens. Now imagine, though, if the church not just did their ability, but imagine if they went above their ability and they did it with joy, what could happen? I don't think we could contain it. I don't think we can even comprehend it. I don't even think we could understand what God could do if we all did that. But they did that here. They gave, and look what they said in verse 4. They begged us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in the ministry of the saints. So listen, when's the last time that you have begged to be a part of a ministry of the saints? When's the last time you've begged to give to something? When's the last time you've begged to serve in something? When's the last time that you considered it a privilege to give and considered it a privilege to serve? Whatever's going on here in the Church of Macedonia, we need at Lexington Park. We need at every church in Southern Maryland. We need at every church around the world. That we would beg to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. That we would beg to serve the saints. That we would beg to contribute to the saints. That we would cooperate, collaborate, and contribute to the ministry of the saints. We would serve and give for these purposes. I hope that we will be those type of people. Then we get to verse 5, and not just we had hoped. In other words, obviously I think that Paul is hoping that good things come of this collection. Obviously Paul is probably excited about this opportunity to gather the money in Jerusalem and to be able to disperse it out to meet the needs of the local churches, to meet the needs of those that are in famine and affliction, and to minister to each other. Because together we can do more than we can separately by ourselves. It's kind of part of the cooperative program. I've shared that with you. But here what we see is, then it gets to this last point, that they gave themselves to the Lord, and then they gave themselves to us by God's will. So, whatever we do for the Lord, but we also do it for each other by God's will. So they were giving themselves to God's purpose first, but secondly, they were giving themselves to God's will. They believed this was God's will. I want to encourage you to think about this. I believe that our church is doing God's will. I believe that Lexington Park Baptist Church is a church where God is on the move. I believe that Lexington Park Baptist Church is a church that wants to make an impact where we're at. We want to connect with community. We want to proclaim that gospel. We do want to love each other. We do want to proclaim the gospel. We do want to build up each other. We want to be a healthy, functioning, vibrant, alive church. And we are. In so many ways we are. And in so many ways we can be like these churches in Macedonia. But I think we can do even more. We can go above our ability to above those things to ability. We can give out of the things maybe we lack. We can still give in abundance or overflowing, as it says here. That we will beg to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We'll beg to minister to the saints. We want to beg and consider it a privilege to serve one another and to contribute and to give and to make a difference. And that we will give ourselves to the Lord and then to the cause of others in God's will. I think we can do those things. I went into a lot of things that we could look at. I also want to see that down here in verses 20 and 21 of the same text. It says, "Indeed, we are giving a careful thought to do what is right." To do what is right. I think when we determine how to administer our funds as a church, it's easy to criticize. And in fact, it says right there, we are taking this precaution so that no one will criticize us with this large sum of how they're administering it. And he says, therefore, we gave careful thought to do what was right, not only before the Lord, but also before God's people. So you have a finance team, you have a council, you have a pastor, you have a staff, and they give careful thought to these things. That we don't just pull numbers out of the sky, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it to honor God and to honor God's people. And I think the more we realize that and we appreciate that, don't criticize it, we appreciate that, the healthier we become, the more positive we become, the more influential and impactful we become, the more God can then take our money and use it in more unique ways. Again, we come together. We give careful thought to do the right things. And when people give careful thought to do the right things, only God should be the critic. Hey, that's all I've got for you. Make sure that you're living out these texts that I shared with you this week. Be a generous person. In our prosperity, may we find that we have great generosity. And especially this time of year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. But all year round too. Hey, that's all I've got for you. Happy Thanksgiving again from me to you. Love you. And just really, really hope you have a great Thanksgiving day. Remember these two realities. God loves you. So do I. I'll see you here Monday, but I hope to see you Sunday at 10 a.m. for worship. Okay, you guys, God bless you. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend. We'll see you later.